This is Larry Molinaro, and I'm talking to you from outside of St. Anne's Church, so I can talk to you without wearing my mask, as opposed to when I'm inside the church playing the organ, and I'll be wearing my mask the entire time. But I wanted to just give you a brief introduction to some of the music you'll be hearing on this evening's concert. It is designed to recreate, at least a little bit, the famous concert that Felix Mendelssohn gave in February of 1840 in order to raise money for a Bach statue outside of Bach's own church, the Thomaskirche in Leipzig, St. Thomas Church. Mendelssohn wrote to his mother, in fact, and I'll read to you. He says, "On Thursday, I gave an organ concert here in the Thomas Church, from the proceeds of which old Sebastian Bach is to have a monument erected to his memory in front of the Thomas School. I gave it solissimo as a soloist and played 9 pieces, and at the end, a Freie Phantasie. I practiced hard for 8 days previously, till I could scarcely stand upright, and executed nothing but organ passages along the street in my gait when I walked out." And that is a letter that he wrote to his mother, actually in August of 1840. So, on this evening's program, and you can read about this on the website, I'll be playing an introduction and fugue from the Clavier-Übung of Bach, the great E-flat major fugue. I'll be playing a chorale prelude on the English translation of the hymn, "Deck thyself, my soul, with gladness." And then I will be playing the Prelude and Fugue in A minor. I will be skipping the famous Pastorale and Fugue in C minor and the Toccata and Fugue in D minor, not because I'm not going to play them, but because we're trying to keep these concerts to about an hour because we're streaming them. And so I will play those 2 pieces on next week's concert along with the Choral Cantata 106, the Actus Tragicus. So I will end with the Pastorella of Bach, and then a work by Mendelssohn himself. In the original program, he gave an improvisation. Robert Schumann, who heard it, talked about an improvisation on a chorale tune, probably "O Sacred Head, Sore Wounded," and Mendelssohn then created variations on that chorale tune, including a fugue, and wove in Bach's name. I've chosen to play Mendelssohn's Sonata number 3 in A major, which is one of my favorite organ pieces, so I couldn't pass up the opportunity to play it. And in fact, it has the chorale tune "Out of the Depths I Cry to Thee," something like "O Sacred Head," and includes wonderful variations, but a wonderful fugue on this chorale tune, and ends with, I think, one of the most spectacular bits of organ music ever written. So much so that when I got married, my wife and I had that as our processional. So this is a brief introduction to the whole program. I will give short video intros to each piece as we go through. Thanks. First up is an introduction and fugue in E-flat. Now the fugue in E-flat is the famous 3-part fugue from Bach's Clavier-Übung. And often it's played here at St. Anne's because it's known as the St. Anne Fugue, because the fugal tune, the first tune, is very similar to the beginning of "O God, Our Help in Ages Past," which is a hymn tune known as St. Anne. So therefore, organists play it here quite a bit. However, Mendelssohn did not play the prelude from that same collection. What he did was he improvised a Freie Phantasie. This was actually typical of organist practice in the mid-19th century with the music of Bach. Bach was known very much for being the writer of fugues, and in fact, organists would often improvise their own preludes to his fugues. At least that's what we read, and so in this case, what we know is that Mendelssohn improvised a prelude to the fugue. I will actually improvise a prelude to the fugue, but because Mendelssohn was so instrumental in reviving the interest in the music of Bach, in particular the Passions, I'm going to use the first recitative from the St. John Passion. It's a wonderful recitative, very much a narrative, and it's a perfect bass line and harmonic structure for an improvised fantasia, and it ends in the right key to get us off into the E-flat fugue. The second piece is the chorale prelude from the great 18 chorale preludes that Bach collected towards the end of his life. These were chorale preludes that had been written throughout his career, and towards the end of his life he assembled them in one volume and re-edited several of them. Some were written fresh for the volume, but they represent really sort of the highest level of his art around chorale variations. Two things to be said about this particular piece. One is that Robert Schumann was quoting Mendelssohn, who said, "If life were to deprive me of hope, then this piece would restore it to me." So Mendelssohn, Schumann, and Johannes Brahms all thought very highly of this particular chorale prelude, and it was a favorite of theirs. And I think you'll hear why, because it is very emotional and almost has a sort of romantic sensibility about it. I like to keep it on the light side and not have it be turgid, and so in that case, in that sense, you'll hear, I think, some lighter sounds to sort of keep the motion going. The other thing for me is that in this collection, there are two pieces that I always think of as jazz pieces. One is the famous chorale variation, ornamented chorale on Nun komm der Heiden Heiland, which is Savior of the Nations Come, and I call that the Billie Holiday variation. And whenever I play it, I have to hear Billie Holiday singing the melody, this elaborate melody in my head, and that gives me a perfect sense of phrasing in my view. This one tonight, the Schmücke DICH, Deck Thyself, My Soul, with Gladness, I think of as the Ella Fitzgerald version. And so I just love to imagine Ella Fitzgerald singing this. I think it speaks to the quality of her voice and her phrasing, and it allows me to play also a sort of jazz bass as well, a little bit detached and always keeping the motion moving forward. So, Deck Thyself, My Soul, with Gladness. Next up is the Prelude and Fugue in A minor, BWV 543, for those of you who count catalog numbers. There's some speculation that the prelude was not written to go with the fugue, although they have been paired together in manuscripts for a long time. So sometimes it was the case that preludes and fugues in the same key were put together, but were not necessarily written for each other or written as a pair. So in this case, the Prelude and Fugue in A minor is one of Bach's virtuoso fugues, probably from his Weimar period, when he was really at his height and of fame as an organist prior to his getting to Leipzig. And the prelude is very improvisational. And I always, when I listen to myself play this, when I record it and listen back, I always feel like I haven't done enough to make it as fluid as possible. But be that as it may, when you hear it tonight, probably what you'll hear is that I'm playing it as if I'm improvising at the organ, meaning as I go through phrases, I might choose to add sounds in a way that if I really were playing an established piece of repertoire, I wouldn't do, because it's meant to be something that just sort of grows organically out of the performance. The fugue is very structured, has a wonderful dance rhythm, and some fantastic flourishes at the end. So I hope that you enjoy it as much as I enjoy playing it. Next up is the Pastorella of Bach, and as the title suggests, it's modeled after the Italian pastorale genre, which was very popular really from the late 16th through the 18th centuries, and typically written in a again kind of a dance meter, a 6/8 meter, and meant to be reminiscent of sort of flute playing and shepherds and bucolic settings, as you can imagine. It's not really known why this was written or for what occasion it was written. There are 4 movements that are typically associated with the Pastorella. It's not clear that they all 4 go together. Mendelssohn likely only had the first, which is the one that actually has the title of Pastorella, and by all indications that is what he played. So on this evening's concert I will play just the first movement of the 4 that are known as that are together in this little piece called the Pastorella, a beautiful little piece. One of the things that I like to do on this particular organ is that the 4-foot flute, so a flute that is sort of an octave higher than notated, is absolutely stunning on this instrument. It actually, it's called a harmonic flute and has its particular quality. And so I will play on that particular sound, and I think it actually lends a really nice character to this piece. So the Pastorella by J.S. Bach. The final piece on tonight's program is the Sonata number 3 in A major by Felix Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn wrote a collection of organ pieces that later were published by Vincent Novello as sonatas. They, in fact, were really written as collections as just individual pieces. But again, sort of in the tradition of much organ music, pieces are often grouped together by key as preludes and fugues. Sometimes suites are done that way. And so in this case, grouping it together as a sonata makes sense at some level. These are not in sonata form, but no matter, they're wonderful pieces. So the Sonata number 3 includes a chorale, which is Out of the Depths I Cry to Thee. So while it is not O Sacred Head, Sore Wounded, which is probably what Mendelssohn improvised on back in 1840, It's a chorale with a similar feel. Mendelssohn gives a wonderful set of variations, really a fugue on this. And it ends with the opening theme coming back in, I think, one of the most outstanding moments in all of organ music. So the Sonata number 3 in A major by Felix Mendelssohn.